Nearly everyone has had a job that just simply sucked. In this podcast, we dive into the terrible workplaces that exist, either due to customer interactions, horrible bosses, bad culture, or environment. Tune in each episode to hear interviews and news stories of why work sucks.
Hello, this is Brian Lamar, and this is another episode of Work Sucks, where we dig into stories from people around the country who share with us how their work sucks. Today, we have Katie from Colorado, who is now a truck driver. Hey, Katie, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
All right, tell us a little bit about a job that made work suck for you.
Yeah, work sucks. Anyways, so I worked for a call center for a cell phone company. You know, there's several of them out there. Beautiful, beautiful cell phones. And customer service, so we would get yelled at constantly by customers, you know, why is my bill turned off and everything else. You know, when I first started, I had an amazing manager. She worked with me. She understood when I was having bad days. She's like, hey, do you need a few minutes? It sounds like you're having a bad day, you know. And there was a coworker who worked next to me. You know, we were best buds. And then our manager decided that she was going to leave the company. Great opportunity for her to be at home more often, you know, super happy for her. But they hired a manager from inside the company from our data team. And we're just going to call her Jay. And she was one of those people who was like, okay, let's go get them, knock them out of the park. She was like trying to get everything going, you know. And she...
Well, that sounds positive, though. Sounds like she's motivated. And, okay, all right.
It was great. It was great when, like, she started. You know, she was like one of those go-getters, let's get it done and everything else. Well, she was such a go-getter. She was like, all the rules have to be followed. You have to be like robot on the phone all the time. Okay. So, you know, she started nitpicking, especially the seniority people. So the guy I was sitting next to behind me, occasionally he'd be late. He had a dog who was diabetic, and occasionally he'd be late. And it was really just a 9 to 5 for him. He was done with it. He was tired, but it was a job. It's all he knew how to do. He'd been there for, you know, 8-ish plus years. You know, she started as soon as she hit the road running, or like the first week she was there, she wrote him up for being late. And he had actually had to take his dog to the vet that day. Wrote him up for being late. And apparently it had progressive, and they found everything they possibly could within like a 2-month period, like not even 2 months, a month, you know, to figure out how to let him go. I don't know what all happened or anything else, but next thing I know, he's like, they canned me. You know, he comes out, starts collecting his stuff, and they're like, they canned me. So I don't know if it didn't fight for it, but she started finding, you know, little things that were difficult for him, you know. And instead of coaching, I don't know if they tried coaching or training or whatever, you know, that wasn't my story to tell. But I noticed, you know, she didn't quite like him. And then, you know, because she liked pretty much everybody else, but, you know, him and me especially. So, you know, I tuck-tailed. I did my job. I did my, you know, my hours. I was on time. I left when I was supposed to. I, you know, was really good. About 6 months into this, you know, position with her being the manager, came to the determination that a service dog would start benefiting me at work.
Okay, all right.
She, you know, I was training the service dog, owner trained service dog, and, you know, they're like, hey, we need proof. Like, so I bring it up to the boss, and I was like, hey, boss lady, and she's like, yeah, it's like, I need to start bringing my service dog into work. She's old enough. She's been trained. She has her tasks done. So I need to start bringing her to work, because she's about 2 at this time, you know, 1.5, 2 years old. Okay. And, you know, she's done her training. She's good to go. She just needs to come in so she can support me. And they're like, well, I don't know. We have to clear it with HR. And I was like, okay. So I email HR, they're like, I don't know, they started trying to throw these different things at me, well, the dog has to be certified through a program. I was like, no, the dog does not need to be certified through the program. Like the biggest service dog scam is when people go through these registries online on websites and stuff to get their dogs certified. Now, if you go through an honest to goodness program, they will certify the dog with their certifications. But there's no certification for the service dogs. They have to migrate a task for a disability. They have to migrate a task. And, there's no service dog registry. So the biggest scam in the world right now.
Okay,
well,
so if I got it correct, if you go to a reputable agency that will help with the training and all that stuff for a service dog, they will certify it with their specific tasks that they train the dog in. But there's no like national registry for service dogs for disabilities. Is that what I'm hearing?
That is correct. Okay. So the ADA, the American Disability Act, it's a beautiful, last I knew it was like page 26 of the ADA Act. It goes over service animal. There is no registry for service animals. So, if somebody's like, hey, you need to certify, well, so-and-so gave me the certification for their dog. They got it online. That's not, they're trained to migrate a task. Essentially, at least one. My service dogs, I've had 2 of them over the last 10 years, and they always have done up to 15 plus tasks, different tasks for me. They're very well trained. They do obedience. I've always run them through Good Canine Citizen, the CGC, Good Canine Citizenship. I'm a dog trainer as well, so I do a lot of the training myself.
Okay.
I've run through some other programs. I've worked with like Domino's Service Dogs is an amazing program out of Colorado. They turn out really good, solid service dogs, but even they'll agree that there's no certified, registry. Go ahead.
So I'd like to make a quick pause in the story right now because I guarantee the listeners are out there going, oh, what kind of dog is it? So can you tell us a little bit more about your dog personally?
So I have St. Bernards. I had St. Bernards as service dogs. I started with a female St. Bernard who's like 98 pounds, named Stormy. Sweetest thing on this earth, and everybody loved her. About 6 years, because service dogs St. Bernards are known for their short lifespans. So when Stormy hit, 5 or 6, I went ahead and wasn't looking for a puppy at this time, but I knew I was going to have to retire her because her hips were starting to give her trouble and she wouldn't be able to do the mobility work that she needed to do for me. So I, came across an AKC registered male puppy who was born in September 28th. He's actually turning 4 this year. And so got a great opportunity to get the pick of the litter. They did all the testing, make sure his knees and everything else and his temperament was good for service dog work, and brought him home and trained them together. And he picked up almost every task that the female St. Bernard did. He's my current St. Bernard. He's 160 pounds and he goes with me everywhere. Yeah, he's currently shedding like nobody's business. But
so here's the 2 things that I think of when I think of a Saint Bernard. You've got the movie Beethoven, right? Okay, and then also the old classic story of the Saint Bernards in the Alps with the little cask around their neck with the brandy in the cask and saving hikers or skiers from the mountain.
It was never brandy in the cask.
Oh, okay, all right.
So that's been, they actually were trained dogs to locate skiers and hikers. And that's why they have the thicker coats and everything, because it was actually to help repel the water and everything. So they were originally bred as rescue dogs.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Well, that makes sense.
Yeah. They've got a nose on them like nobody's business. and I'm not saying for our listeners out there, go out and get your St. Bernard service dogs, because they are very stubborn dogs, and you can either go very, very lazy or very, very hyper, and they don't always want to work.
Okay. So be very careful when you're picking a St. Bernard.
Yeah, be very careful when you're doing a St. Bernard. There's better dogs temperamented for service dog works. I've kind of ended up with like a couple of unicorns in service dog work with my St. Bernards, because they just had the temperament when they first started, and they showed the promise, like the interruption behaviors and stuff like that, before it was even trained into them. I didn't do a lot of training on a lot of the interruption tasks or the location tasks. We didn't have to do a lot of training. They picked up on that naturally.
Okay, so I mean, you're sounding like you really know your stuff when it comes to not only picking out a service dog, but also getting them trained and doing all of the I don't know how to say it, legal aspects of making sure that you've got a trained service dog with you. And so you introduced this service dog at some point into your workplace. You said you told your supervisor that you needed to bring in the service dog. What was the response after that?
They kept pushing back. It took me 90 days and reaching out to askjan.com to get a response back from the whole company, like the HR of the company, that I could actually bring the service dog to work. So, the big boss pulls me in, because there's the managers and then the big boss, the big boss pulls me in, and she's like, okay, we've got approval for you to start bringing in Stormy, but we need you to move your desk. And I'm like, why? Moving desks shouldn't, in case somebody's allergic, or so the dog's not a distraction. I was like, the dog's not supposed to be a distraction. She would go under my desk. She knows her training. The only accommodation, if they were going to accommodate with me, the service dog, they wanted to move my desk. And I was like, okay, at this point in time, I'm tired of fighting. I'm tired of fighting this job. I'm tired of fighting. I need the job, because it was 10 minutes from home, like 5-minute drive from home. It was, an easy gig. And so they moved me back in a corner to a corner desk that is by I don't know what it's called. It's the space where people go out to hang out and stuff. The kitchen area. They put me over by the kitchen, the break room. So it's over by the break room. It's probably 4 feet across by, 5 feet deep. It's not even very big. My truck is bigger than this little office space they stick me in. And it's away from everybody. It's away from my peers, my coworkers. It's away from the managers. So if I needed to speak to a manager, there's usually 2 plus the big boss, up to 5, depending on if they were in the different areas that we had, So we had 4 or 5 different managers. To be able to go speak with a manager, I'd have to get up and walk all the way to the other side of the building to speak with a manager, or hope they answered my chats.
Okay. All right.
So they
isolated. Very inconvenient.
Yeah. So they isolated me, like completely, just like isolated this whole time. The first beginning of it, they're like, they didn't ask me to vacuum or anything else. They're like, okay, this is where you're going to stick, So they put me back. About 1.5 to 2 years, I start struggling mentally, because I'm like a social butterfly at work. I'm like, hey, how are you doing? Talking to my coworkers and stuff, but I had no coworkers. They stuck me in a corner and they left me there. They're like, do your job. They didn't care. At one point in time, I'd take my breaks and I'd take a nap on the floor because, well, nobody cared. They're like, they'd walk me and I'd be there and like nobody would care. I was like, great. I didn't feel like I was an appreciative employee. But again, I needed the job. It was 5 minutes from home. It was an easy gig. Well, I start making little mistakes. One day I did not use a customer's name during the call. I got written up for it. instead of like being brought in the office, getting talked about it, I get written up for it, like for not using the customer name. Okay, and then the next one, the next write up is like, you didn't tell them about the assurance program, which is like the insurance program for the phones. And I was like, but it was a payment call. But you need to tell them about, the assurance program or the My Vero, like, or my AT&T or Verizon or cell phone company,
Right.
And you have to tell them about that, how they can pay online if they want to. And so they wrote me up for that. And so I got 3 write-ups, and it was like nitpicking little stuff. Like, you didn't use the customer's name. You didn't tell them to call, you can make payments online. And I was like, I'm human. I can't do the same thing over and over and over and over again without, and they hadn't given me feedback for like 6 months or about 6 months.
So
and then all of a sudden,
at this point, though, you hadn't been written up for anything prior
nothing.
to the dog. So
Nothing.
And then now the dog has entered into the situation, you got moved. You got asked to start vacuuming the floors.
No, I hadn't been asked to vacuum the floors yet.
That hadn't come yet. Okay.
That hadn't come yet. So, but it's just they started trying to find ways to get rid of me.
Okay.
Let's find where she's not doing her job correctly. Let's get this broken up where, she's just not doing that job. And so they started giving me feedback like every week. Like, I went and talked to the big boss, and I was like, you know me better than this. You know I handle this better. You know I've been doing better. You know that this is not my consistent work. This is like a once in a 10 call or once in a 20 call, especially if you get those difficult clients calling in going, hey, I can't, you have to, they scream at you and you go, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, have a nice day. You have to deal with it. And the big boss is like, I know this is not your work. We, by the 4th, the potential try to write up, she's like, this is it. You either get it together or you're not. I was like, I don't want to leave. I'm doing okay. I'm like struggling because I'm back in this corner and I have to come all the way up to find a manager. I'm struggling because I've been stuck. I'm not doing it, and we talked and she's like, I tell you what, I'm going to have this trainer person start pulling your calls. 1 call a day or whatever, 2 calls a day. And we're going to start pulling your calls and we're going to see if it's a consistent thing. Within a week, I didn't hear anything else. Didn't hear feedback, didn't hear anything. I didn't have any more write-ups. Everything went fine. And then I got sick. And so my medication went wonky and I got sick and they're like, well, you can't just call in. So I'd been there over a year. So I was able to go to my doctor and get the FMLA paperwork filled out. And so they couldn't fire me if I wasn't there at work because I got like 2 days a month where I couldn't do it. So, we made it through the little hurdle where they were trying to nitpick everything on my calls to me getting sick. And then they're like, well, you can't miss much more time. I said, yeah, I can. Confirmed to my FMLA, this is part of why I get sick. I'm not doing well. It takes, I want to say 3 or 4 months of me getting sick consistently before something was resolved on that. It was a change of medication, almost a hospital stay and a change of medication. I had gotten that sick. And, went back to work, still had my FMLA paperwork, still hadn't heard anything about my quality or anything else from my calls. They went back to maybe checking my calls once a week, maybe calling, checking one twice a week or something. Didn't even get feedback how I was doing at all. Like, I had to go ask, have you pulled any calls today or this week? How am I doing? Oh, yeah, you've got 100%, no worries. So once the manager figured out she couldn't nitpick me out of a job, she tried, to figure out, then technical, you're not showing up for work. You can't You can't do that. She then went from from trying to get me kicked out to just ignoring me. Like, I'd send her a chat and she wouldn't answer. So I'd have to go to the manager or a different manager or the boss. And I was like, I need this help. I don't know what to do. Or I'd walk up to the manager that was trying to get rid of me, walk up to her desk and go, hey, I need help. What do you need now?
So when you're saying you need help, it's you're having like these calls with customers, and there's a question or a complex problem that pops up that you need assistance with. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. So it wasn't like your regular payment call or the majority of the issue calls. It was like, hey, what is my bill doing? And then, they have this outrageous $2,000 charge on their bill, and you're like, hey, it's roaming. I need half of that sent back. They've agreed to change it. We'd go through and figure it out. But to get that, they're like, what do you need now? I was like, wow. I'm like, come on. I didn't even want to approach this manager at all. Because
so your inability to be able to approach the manager and get resolution for the customers was not only just hurting your relationship with your manager and the customers, but also the companies.
Yeah, because it's just we couldn't get resolution. So she went from nitpicking to technical to let's just ignore.
So we've got nitpicking to technical, and then they find out that they can't be anything done about that if you're on FMLA, and then now they're ignoring you. So I'm sensing that something drastic is about to happen in the story. It sounds like you've hit a crescendo of issues, and it's going to decline soon. So tell us about that decline.
So they do a remodel of the building, of the office areas. They stick me in with a couple of the senior agents that have been there for 8 years. I'm going on 6 years at this point, and so they stick us. We do great. They figure out the service dog is not such a big problem anymore. So when they redo the building, they stick me at the end of a lane so she has room to spread out, which is great. I'm actually back in the building. I'm back where I'm doing good, talking and being able to do all right, once the remodel is done. And I get pulled into the office by the boss. Says, we need you to start vacuuming twice a week. The hallway that you walk twice a week.
Okay.
We walk. We just walk. We don't lay down. We don't play. We walk from there to the bathroom. Now, mind you, we've already done 3 or 4 years without vacuuming more than once or twice here or there when the desk gets dirty and I want to clean it up before the cleaning crew gets it, kind of thing. Not once did we vacuum while we were back stuck in that little corner. But now there's this big remodel, and I'm using the other hallway. They're like, you have to vacuum twice a week.
Okay.
The dog's been groomed. The dog's been taken care of. You have to, you have to start vacuuming twice a week. I was like, why? What's the point? You have a cleaning crew, so they wanted it vacuumed every day. So they had me do it every day that the cleaning crew did not come in that day. So, so I start vacuuming. If I forgot one day, I'd get pulled in the office. You need to make sure you're vacuuming. It's like, okay, fine. I'm getting tired at this point. I'm getting tired of vacuuming. I didn't have to vacuum around my desk, just the hallway, twice a week. I was like, this is ridiculous. It's a service dog. I've already been accommodated for years without this issue, and now we have this issue. So COVID hits. Welcome to 2020. Beautiful COVID. We all survived it. And since COVID hits, they have decided that I am the first one to go home and be their guinea pig. Since they're closing down offices and everything, people are required to go home and work from home if you can. They're like, hey, you've been here for 6 years, 6-7 years. We want you to go home. They don't send the senior rep who's been there for 10 years or the other senior rep who's been there for 9 years. They send me home. So they didn't have to deal with me vacuuming or the service dog or anything else. They didn't tell me that, but I'm pretty sure that's why it was. So I load everything in my car, go home, hook it up, spend the next day and a half being their guinea pig, making sure the new technology works and everything else. Not that I minded at all, because I got to go home and I didn't have to worry about potentially being exposed to COVID unintentionally, because, my family, my wife, 2 kids, they go to school, my wife's a teacher, it was going to hit eventually. We were just ready for it, but they had sent me home, got set up, everything else. And it was great. I was able to be home with the dogs. I didn't have to deal with the office. Everything was great. Come about 2021, they start bringing people back into the office. And, they start bringing everybody back into the office, half the staff, 3/4 of the staff, there was.
But you're the last one back. So
they didn't even invite me back.
Oh, so just a permanent exile, permanent, let's keep Katie out of here. Okay.
Right. So one of my coworkers who'd been there for 5 years, I'm talking to her because she was working from home as well. And she said, they called me and said, I need to go back into the office or I could lose my job. And I was like, I don't want to work at the office. I want to work from home. I'm productive. And I was like, I understand. They haven't even talked to me about moving back to the office. She's like, really? I was like, yeah, they haven't even talked to me about moving back to the office. They haven't called me, contacted me, nothing.
She's that to me, that sounds like an inequality in the workplace. So you got some people that are wanting to stay home, and then you're out for whatever reason that they've got you out. I'm not going to say it's because of the dog, but it's pretty coincidental.
Yeah. I was like, well, they didn't even talk to me about bringing me back to the office at all. So they kept on pushing the people who were working from home to start moving back to the office, pushing and pushing and pushing. Not once did they contact me. I was like, I can't keep on doing this. In the meantime, my mental health is starting to decline because I don't get that outlook of getting out of the house. I live with my wife, my 2 kids, my mom, and my brother hangs out quite a bit. I've got a household that I take care of, and everybody was expecting me to run the house while I was working. I didn't get to separate that work from home. I didn't get to break it up or drive or anything else. And it just proceeded to just go downhill. My mental health just went downhill. The dogs wouldn't leave my side.
You're a call center person as well, so you need to be able to concentrate on the calls that you're there, and also to have, a pretty quiet place to work, and you've got a family at home that, walking around on eggshells, or at least you would like them to be walking around on eggshells while you're on calls, right?
Right. Yeah. They'd try, I'd be at work, and my mom, bless her soul, she'd come over and try to start talking to me, and I was like, about house stuff, and I'm like, I can't. I have to work. And then she'd get frustrated because I was like, I have to take this call. And she's like, you're always working. And I was like, I can't. So just progressively, my mental health just hit the tank. My anxiety, I've got generalized anxiety, complex PTSD, that all starts hitting up, and the dogs are higher on alert and everything else because I had the 2 of them at the time, got tired. Got tired and tired and tired. So about September, I decided that I was going to leave. I was going to get my CDLA. And so I started studying for the CDL permits and started reading and was going to take the test at the end of October. And I didn't want to do anything until I had known I had passed the permit test. A lot of companies want you to have their permit in place before they will hire you on because they want to make sure you're serious about it and you've done your research. And so I, got moved up by a week because I was like, I can't wait another week before I take this test. And they had an opening at, down the way a bit. So I took it. And I passed. I passed missing only 4 questions out of 95. So that shows you I'm
Nice.
intelligent, Yeah, the 3 different 95 questions, 3 different tests, air brakes, general knowledge and pre-trip inspection, passed, missed 4 questions out of 95. When I finished in like 20 minutes. So we're like, wow, that's the quickest we've had anybody finish altogether. And I was like, I had it. It was, so I got an offer to start November 2nd. I think it was November 2nd. So the 24th, I called, put in my week's notice. I ended up putting a week's notice instead of 2 weeks' notice. And I had some vacation time I wanted to use because they don't pay out vacation time anytime over 20 hours. But because of my FMLA, I had to use all that PT or that vacation time if I took time off. But I actually had some 8 hours built up, so I wanted to take like 8 hours off and actually get paid for my vacation. And, Monday I went to work. Tuesday I woke up with a fever of 103.5, and I was like, I can't work like this. So I call in. Wednesday I get a call back from the boss, and she's like, yeah, this isn't going to work for us. Your last day was Monday. We appreciate you trying to give us notice, but your last day was Monday, and that's what we're putting it down as. When you feel better, take your equipment into HR. I was like, okay, great. So Thursday I didn't wake up for a fever, ran my equipment into HR, dropped it off because I wasn't even going to go to the boss. Knew one of the other employees, one of my coworkers, went ahead and cleared out my desk at the office that's been sitting there since COVID started, And Saturday, I go out on a date, because I'm leaving Sunday, go out on my date and I can't taste anything. She's like, you have to test for COVID.
Yeah.
Went and did a rapid test and I came back positive for COVID. So,
So that fever was an indicator that you had contracted COVID, I'm sure. And then, so your workplace decided to fire you for, they had their reasons built up, and they had their opinion already made. Probably they were just looking for that trigger point. So when you called out sick, that was it, right?
Yeah. I messaged the boss, when I found out on Monday. I was like, hey, boss, wanted to let you know that fever last week was COVID. You might want to let HR know. Nothing.
Yeah, well, because you showed up at HR to out process, right?
To drop. Yeah. So, yeah, I was like, yeah, I popped positive for COVID. And, that's my parting gift to the company is leave their HR with COVID.
Oh, my goodness.
I have no idea what happened. Nobody responded, nothing, got my last check in the mail. It was much smaller than I had anticipated. I had to go out for 2 weeks because I had to quarantine for COVID. And yeah, so, but it was the best move. Like I had spent 7 years with that company. Best move I'd ever done. Before I left, after I was testing, I decided to do a little, little party and have some of my girlfriends over, like some of my old coworkers and stuff like that, because I was feeling better. We were good. We were past the quarantine stage for, before I hit that, I was like, hey, I wonder what they're hiring for. So I pull it up on their website, and they're hiring for $15.50 an hour. When I left, I was getting paid $14.75 an hour. I've been with the company for 7 years. So my little bug dropped in a few ears that day, and I don't know exactly what happened.
Well, I mean, it sounds like to me that at this point, you're enjoying what you do now. So
yes. I'm driving the 48 states, so
yeah, so you're seeing the world, or you're seeing the country anyways. You're enjoying your new career. So tell me about your dog. Are you able to take your dog with you?
Yes. So my Saint Bernard Rue, he's Rubius, aka Rue. He's got a fan club at almost all the terminals we stop at. Yeah, you do, bud. I send out like weekly emails of new pictures of him during the week because They actually like getting Happy Meal of Rue. He's on the truck. I don't think I can go to a fuel stop or diesel stop where, a fuel stop at all without, some driver going, "That's an awesome dog." You know, look at that co-pilot. He eats you out of the truck. And, I get more conversation with him on the, and the greatest thing is I don't have to vacuum twice a week.
Yeah, well, also, you kind of have a bit of a safety net right there with you as well, because there's, being a trucker out over the open road, especially as a female, could probably be a bit daunting. But nobody's really going to mess with a Saint Bernard sitting there next to you.
No, but he's the friendliest guy. I get out and they're like, "Hey, would you like to meet him?" Really? I can? Absolutely. Like I said, he's got fan clubs probably all over. He's got a Facebook page. So we try to update those pages.
Tell the listeners the Facebook page, and we'll see if he gets a bigger fan club.
It's Rubius the Service Dog is his Facebook page.
Rubius the Service Dog. Okay, I'm going to check that out, and I will put that in the comments on Podomatic.com in the description of this podcast. I'll put that page in those comments as well.
Yeah, we'll have to make sure we keep that updated.
Yeah, I want to see pictures of Rubius.
Yeah, from when he was a puppy, when the breeder sent me pictures of him sitting in the little scale at, when he only tipped the scale at 15 pounds to, 160 pounds.
Oh, wow.
So he'll be 4 in September. He gets in and out of the truck like nobody's business. People are like, "Oh, don't you have to have a ramp?" It's like, "No, watch this." And I open the door. He gets the chance to stand outside if he wants to. The door stays open, and he decides if he wants to come around. And, I get him on a long lead, and, he makes his family line very, very proud. They love hearing about him. They had some severe loss. They're just a small breeder. They, just a very small breeder, and they had some serious loss with some of their females, this last couple of years, and it's just they were glad that they were able to get the dogs out. His dad's actually a service dog.
Oh, wow.
So
it's a family business.
Yeah, it's a family business, so it's a hard business. He's curled up next to me snoring. So
well, Katie, just in some closing remarks. First of all, I want to say thank you very much for coming on the show and telling us your story of your journey to what you're doing now. Second of all, thanks for having the bravery to tell that story, and also you are filling a vital need for the country right now. I have such respect for truck drivers. I haven't mentioned this on the show. My dad and my grandpa were truck drivers, and honestly, there would be parts of the country that would starve to death within a week or two without truck drivers. So thank you for going into that career field, and I am very glad that it's working out for you, and I'm very glad that you're able to have your service dog with you, and there's no issues, and that you've got a career that you truly love.
Yes. Yeah, we're kind of like the unsung heroes, It's just out there beating those miles. So, the best advice I can talk to people who drive the little four-wheelers, the cars, pay attention and give those semis space, Give us space.
So
we're not there to make your end of your day, but give us space.
Yeah, I know. A loaded truck. People don't realize how long it takes a loaded truck to actually come to a stop from highway speed
even
to
worse.
a stop. Yeah. But before we go, do you have any sage wisdom or advice for someone else who may be dealing with the same thing? Maybe they have a service animal and they're bringing it to work and they're catching hell for it. Do you have any sage advice of how to navigate that?
Per the American Disability Acts, they have to offer accommodations. They don't need to know what's wrong with you, why you need a service dog, but having that general letter from your doctor stating yes, he or she needs this service dog, they help mitigate their disabilities, is beneficial. It's absolutely beneficial to have everywhere from a work to a housing situation. Having that letter saying this dog migrates the disability of their handler is huge. It's like gold in the service dog world, you know. But also make sure there's a big difference between emotional support dogs and service dogs. Service dogs help mitigate disabilities, and emotional support dogs are going to be there just to help you feel better. If they're there to make you happy, then it's not a true service dog.
So service dogs are covered and protected under ADA,
yes.
but emotional support dogs, that's more dubious area, more gray area. Is that what you're saying?
That is a huge gray area.
Okay.
A task for a service dog is not, they make me feel better. So, some of Rue's tasks is he helps me up from a sitting position. He helps me helps me down from a standing position. I can use him to brace when I need to get up or down. I have generalized anxiety and complex PTSD, and a lot of people don't understand, I don't use him because his presence makes me safe. I can mark where my car is at a location and tell him, like, if I have an anxiety attack, I tell him find it, and he will find the car and get me out of the store.
Oh, wow.
He will guide me through people out of the store. He will find my mom. He will find my wife. If I have an anxiety attack in the store, he can mark the doors and get us outside, away from people. If it gets too much, he'll put himself in between me and a person to give me that space. Usually it's long enough for me to register there's somebody there.
Gotcha. Okay. All right.
So.
Well, again, Katie, thank you very much for being on the show. I think there's going to be a lot of people who listen to your story and get a lot out of it. But again, thank you for being on the show, and we'll go ahead and end this interview now.
All right. You have a great day.
All right.
This has been an episode of Work Sucks. Work Sucks is a podcast in the Lamar Communications Group. For questions or a chance to have your story featured on this podcast, email the host at brian.lamar1453@gmail.com.